Welcome everyone to Midwest Tree ID. On this channel, it is my mission to help you learn an abundance of trees that grow right here in the Midwest, and some key features on how to identify them. There's just one thing to clarify before we begin. We're not going to be throwing hatred or ridiculing any of the species that we're going to be talking about. But we do, however, want to encourage thoughtful conversation in the comments about personal experiences and things like that. Please try to remember that everything has value and that we are here to enjoy nature and everything it has to offer. So without anything else, let's jump right in. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're in Mount Hope Cemetery in Urbana, Illinois, and we're talking about Juniperus virginiana, the eastern red cedar, or just the common American juniper. And the common American juniper is a little bit of a thug in the landscape, very common to find along roadways and ditches, and you find some very, very nice specimens in the landscape, and especially in cemeteries like this one. And there's a lot of other cultivars that have really made nice specimen landscape plants. So the eastern red cedar, much like the arborvitae, is going to have these really, really short, scaly looking needles that are typically a good glossy green, although in winter they can kind of fade to a little bit of a yellow, almost bronzy color. But instead of these being flat like the arborvitaes, they're going to be kind of almost like tufted or puffy looking, rounded, and rather than just a flat like the arborvitae. And I actually have an arborvitae right next to it, so I can kind of do some comparisons here in a little bit. But one of the things that's very common with the eastern red cedar is it has, on the new growth especially, it tends to be a little bit prickly. Now, it's not as much the needles themselves that are as prickly as much as it is the stem, the branches, if this camera can zoom in enough that you can see what I'm looking at. But on these, come on camera, zoom in. I knew it wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, but on these stems, there's these little barb-looking things, and they can be quite prickly. So you have to really be quite careful when you're handling this. It's a little bit easy to get pricked by it. So that's the common features of the leaves and the needles. Now, as for the cones, this has got some undeveloped ones here. They typically are these purplish, bluish, little berry-looking things. They're often referred to as juniper berries, but they are actually cones. And inside there, it will look more like your typical cone that you would see on anything else. They're small, not much bigger than a blueberry typically, maybe a little smaller. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at the bark, and we'll take a look at the habit, and then we'll do some comparisons to the American arborvitae. So much like the American arborvitae, the bark is going to be rather shredded and peeling, kind of as if a cat has taken its claws and scratched it. And it's going to have streaks of lighter white, brown, almost in a reddish or orangish color as well. And that's pretty persistent all the way through and even out to the younger growth. Mature specimens can be quite pyramidal and sometimes a little bit picturesque. There's a lot of variation with this species as to how it's going to look in maturity, but typically you can see them reaching about 50, even 60 feet in height with real mature specimens. It's not very often to find those in the landscape, although again, old cemeteries like Mount Hope here in Urbana, it's very common. There's a lot of these junipers in here that are quite large, probably quite old as well. Sometimes you can find them along the interstate growing rather shrub-like with their leaves coming all the way down to the base here. But yeah, 50, maybe 60 feet in height and about 15, 20, maybe even 30 feet wide at the most broadest point at the base. And yeah, it can be a nice specimen to find. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a little bit of the differences and comparisons in the foliage between the American arborvitae and the eastern red cedar. So I'm going to try my best here. So here's the the American arborvitae, and you can see how the cones are pretty much a brown scaly cone versus on the juniper, if you can even see them, which they're the bluish purple berry looking cones. And the overall look of these is also quite different. The arborvitae is very, very flat, as you can kind of see, with the exception of the cones. The juniper is very, I'll say puffy, or very, I guess, rounded or whorled. And so those are really some of the key differences between the two. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing, but you can tell how flat this is versus how, I guess, three-dimensional the juniper tends to be. The eastern red cedar is native throughout much of the eastern and central part of the United States, including much of the Midwest. It also can be considered quite prolific in the landscape from time to time. You see it seeding all over the roadways. I know there's tons of it popping up wildly everywhere in Missouri. It can actually become quite a fire hazard in some of the western states where they deal with regular wildfires. So that can make it a little bit, as I said earlier, a little bit of a thug in the landscape. It can be quite aggressive, but it can still be a very nice choice for a lawn specimen or hedge, and things like that. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the Eastern Red Cedar. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you guys next time.